Your mindset is the operating system of your entire life. Everything you achieve, everything you fail at, every relationship you build or destroy starts in your head before it happens in the world. Most people spend their whole lives blaming circumstances. The economy was bad. They didn't have the right connections. Their family didn't support them. Their boss was unfair. And sure, external factors matter. But here's what separates people who change their lives from people who stay stuck. The people who win decided their mindset was non-negotiable. Think about two people facing the exact same rejection. One person gets turned down for a job and thinks, I'm not good enough. I never will be. They stop applying. They stop trying. Their mindset becomes a cage they built themselves. The other person gets the same rejection and thinks, that wasn't the right fit. What do I need to learn? What do I need to improve? They come back stronger. They come back smarter. The only difference between these two people is what they chose to believe about themselves. Your mindset is like the foundation of a house. You can have the most beautiful design, the best materials, the perfect location. But if the foundation is cracked, everything falls apart. Your mindset is that foundation. If you believe you're capable, you'll take action. If you believe you deserve success, you'll push through rejection. If you believe you can learn anything, failure becomes information instead of identity. The problem is that most of us inherited our mindset from other people. Your parents told you that you were smart or not smart. Your teachers reinforced it. Your friends confirmed it. Society added its own layer of expectations, and now you're operating on a system you never consciously chose. You're running someone else's code. But here's the beautiful part. You can rewrite it. Right now. Today. This isn't positive thinking where you ignore reality. This isn't pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about choosing how you interpret reality. Choosing what you believe is possible. Choosing how you respond when things get hard. When you shift your mindset, you shift your behavior. When you shift your behavior, you shift your results. When you shift your results, you shift your entire life. It's not magic, it's cause and effect. In this series, we're going to break down exactly how to do this. We're going to look at the specific mindsets that separate winners from everyone else. We're going to show you how to identify the beliefs that are holding you back. We're going to give you the frameworks to rebuild your internal operating system from the ground up. Because your mindset isn't fixed. It's not something you're born with and stuck with forever. It's a skill. It's something you can develop. And once you understand that, everything changes. The people who transform their lives aren't smarter than you. They're not luckier than you. They just decided that their mindset mattered more than their circumstances, and they did the work to change it. So let's dive in. The first place mindset shows up is in how you respond to failure. Most people see failure as evidence that they can't do something. They fail once, maybe twice, and they quit. They tell themselves they're just not built for it. But people with a growth mindset see failure completely differently. They see it as information. They see it as a chance to learn what doesn't work, so they can adjust and try again. Think about a kid learning to ride a bike. They fall off. They get back on. They fall off again. They don't sit there thinking, I guess I'm not a bike riding person. They just keep going until it clicks. Somewhere along the way, we lose that. We start internalizing failure as a reflection of who we are instead of just what happened this time. The second place mindset matters is in how you talk to yourself. Your internal dialogue shapes everything. If you're constantly telling yourself, you're not good enough, not smart enough, not disciplined enough. Your brain actually starts to believe it. It starts filtering for evidence that confirms what you already believe. You notice all the times you failed and ignore all the times you succeeded. But if you shift that dialogue, if you start telling yourself you're capable of learning, that you're getting better, that this is hard, but you can figure it out, your brain starts looking for evidence of that instead. This isn't positive thinking in the toxic way, where you pretend problems don't exist. This is about being honest about where you are while staying committed to where you're going. It's about believing that your current situation is not your final destination. The third place mindset changes. Everything is in how you approach challenges. People with a fixed mindset avoid challenges because they feel threatening. If you believe your abilities are fixed, then a hard task is just proof that you're not good enough. So you stay in your comfort zone. You play it safe. But people with a growth mindset actually seek out challenges because they know that's where growth happens. They understand that struggle is the price of progress, not a sign that something's wrong. Here's what's wild. The brain actually grows when you struggle. When you're doing something hard, your brain is literally forming new neural pathways. You're rewiring yourself, but you have to stay in that discomfort long enough for it to happen. Most people bail right before the breakthrough because they don't understand that the struggle is the point. The last thing I want you to understand is that mindset isn't something you have once and you're done. It's something you practice. It's a skill. You're going to have days where you slap back into fixed mindset thinking. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to want to quit. That's normal. What matters is that you notice it and you redirect. You catch yourself in that limiting thought and you ask yourself, is this actually true? Or is this just fear talking? Most of the time, it's fear. And fear is just a signal that you're about to grow. And here's what most people get wrong about that signal. They think fear means stop. They think fear means you're on the wrong path. But fear is actually the opposite. Fear is your confirmation that you're at the edge of what you know. You're about to expand beyond your current limits. That's uncomfortable. That's supposed to be uncomfortable. Think about the last time you did something that genuinely changed you. Got a new job, started a relationship, learned a skill that mattered. There was fear attached to it, not because it was bad for you, but because it was unknown. Your brain was protecting you from the unfamiliar. That's its job. But your job is to move forward anyway. The shift happens when you stop fighting the fear and start treating it like information. Instead of, I'm scared, so I shouldn't do this, you say, I'm scared, which means this matters, which means I should pay attention. You're not ignoring the fear. You're not being reckless. You're just refusing to let it be the final word. This is where your mindset actually does the heavy lifting. Because if you believe that fear means danger, you'll retreat. You'll stay small. You'll protect yourself into a cage. But if you believe that fear is feedback, that it's your nervous system telling you you're about to level up, then you can move through it. You can feel it and do it anyway. And the more you do that, the more your brain recalibrates. You start accumulating evidence that you can handle hard things. You prove to yourself that you survive discomfort, that you're more capable than you thought. That's when your mindset actually shifts. Not from reading about it or thinking positively, from doing the thing despite the fear, from building a track record of following through. This is why the same person can have completely different results in different areas of their life. You might be fearless in your career, but paralyzed in relationships. or confident socially, but terrified of financial decisions. It's not because you're inconsistent. It's because you've built evidence in one area and not the other. You've proven to yourself that you can handle career challenges. So your mindset there is strong, but you haven't built that evidence in relationships yet. So your mindset there is still stuck. The fix is the same in every domain. You start small. You pick something that scares you but isn't catastrophic. You do it. You survive. You do it again. Gradually, your nervous system learns that this thing isn't actually dangerous. Your mindset shifts. Your identity expands. You become someone who does the thing. And that's the real work. Not thinking differently, doing differently, not visualizing success, accumulating small wins, not affirming your way to confidence, building it through action. Your mindset follows your behavior, not the other way around. So the question isn't, how do I think myself into courage? It's, what's one small thing I could do today that would prove to myself that I'm capable? Because that's where everything changes. That's where the momentum builds. You do something small, you feel the result. Your brain updates its model of who you are. Then you do something slightly bigger and bigger still. This is how people transform. Most of us have it backwards. We think we need to feel confident first, then act. But that's not how the human nervous system works. Your body leads, your mind follows. When you move, when you take action, despite the fear, your nervous system registers that as evidence of capability. That evidence accumulates. Confidence is just the byproduct of repeated proof. Think about someone you know who seems naturally confident. They're not confident because they were born that way. They're confident because they've done hard things. They've failed. They've gotten back up. Their mindset reflects their track record of action. This applies to everything. Want to be creative? You don't need to feel inspired first. You sit down and create. The act of creating changes your brain. You become a creative person because you do creative work. Want to be disciplined? You don't wait until you feel disciplined. You do the discipline thing once, then again, then again. Your identity shifts to match your behavior. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't a thinking problem. It's an action problem. And the beautiful part is that action is something you can control right now. You can't control your thoughts perfectly. You can't control your emotions perfectly. But you can control what you do in the next 5 minutes. So when you're stuck in a limiting belief, when you're telling yourself you're not good enough, or not capable, or not the type of person who does that thing, the antidote isn't more thinking. It's one small action that contradicts the belief. You don't have to believe you can do it. You just have to do it. The belief follows. This is why the people who change their lives fastest aren't the ones who read the most books or listen to the most podcasts. They're the ones who take the smallest possible action today. Not tomorrow, today. Because action breaks the cycle. Action is the reset button on your mindset. Your mind is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly lazy. It wants to conserve energy, so it relies on patterns. It relies on what you've always believed about yourself. The only way to interrupt that pattern is through behavior that doesn't fit the old story. You do something that forces your brain to update its assumptions. This is why confidence isn't something you build in your head. It's something you build in the world. Every time you follow through on a commitment, even a small one, you're depositing evidence into your confidence account. Every time you do what you said you'd do, you're telling your brain that you're reliable, that you're capable, that you can trust yourself. And once you trust yourself, everything else becomes possible because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're not doubting whether you can do it. You know you can because you've proven it to yourself repeatedly. Your mindset becomes unshakable because it's built on a foundation of action, not wishful thinking. This is where most people get stuck, though. They understand the concept, they nod along, they even feel inspired for a few days. But then life gets messy, work gets demanding. Someone criticizes them, they fail at something, and suddenly that foundation cracks because it was never tested under pressure. Real mindset strength only develops when you're uncomfortable, when you're facing resistance, when you want to quit but you don't. Think about it this way. A belief that's never been challenged isn't really a belief yet. It's just a thought you haven't tested. The moment you push through something difficult and come out the other side, that belief calcifies. It becomes part of your operating system. This is why successful people often talk about their failures. Not because failure is fun, not because they're humble bragging, but because they know that every failure they survived proved something to themselves. It proved they could handle disappointment. It proved they could get back up. It proved that failure wasn't fatal. Your mindset becomes anti-fragile when you stop seeing obstacles as threats and start seeing them as information. That project failed? What did you learn? That relationship ended? What did you discover about what you actually need? That opportunity didn't work out? What does this tell you about which direction to move next? This reframing isn't positive thinking. It's not pretending bad things are good. It's literally changing your relationship to difficulty itself. You stop being someone who avoids problems and become someone who solves them. That identity shift is massive. And here's what happens next. Once you've proven to yourself that you can handle hard things, your baseline confidence changes permanently. Not in an arrogant way, in a grounded way. You know what you're capable of because you've lived it. The person who's pushed through 5 difficult projects isn't nervous about project number 6. The person who's recovered from 5 rejections doesn't panic at rejection. Number 6. The person who's rebuilt their life once knows they can do it again if they have to. This is why mindset truly is everything. It's not about positive affirmations in the mirror. It's about building a track record of proving to yourself what you can do. It's about creating evidence that you're capable. It's about understanding that every single challenge you face is either making you stronger or teaching you something essential. Your mindset is the operating system that determines whether you see life as something that happens to you or something you're actively creating. And that determines everything else that follows. Most people never realize they're running an outdated operating system. They inherited their mindset from their parents, their teachers, their environment, and they never questioned whether it was actually serving them. That's the trap. You're operating on autopilot with software nobody ever helped you examine or upgrade. Here's what changes when you take control of this. When you shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, obstacles stop feeling like dead ends. They become information. They become data points. A rejection isn't proof you're not good enough. It's feedback that something in your approach needs adjusting. That's a completely different experience of the same event. Think about learning to play an instrument. A beginner with a growth mindset hears themselves play poorly and thinks, I'm not good yet. That's honest. That's accurate. A beginner with a fixed mindset hears the same thing and thinks, I'm not a musical person. I don't have talent for this. Same skill level, completely different interpretation. And that interpretation determines whether they practice tomorrow or quit. The person who practices tomorrow gets better. The person who quits stays stuck. Over months and years, that tiny difference in mindset creates a chasm in ability. But here's the thing that most people miss. The ability itself isn't what changed their life. The mindset did. Because the mindset is what kept them in the game long enough for the ability to develop. This applies everywhere. Relationships, business, health, creativity. The people who build thriving relationships aren't necessarily born with better social skills. They believe relationships can be learned and improved, so they work on them. The people who build successful businesses aren't always the smartest people in the room. They believe that problems can be solved, so they solve them. The people who get healthy aren't necessarily blessed with perfect genetics. They believe their habits can change, so they change them. Your mindset is the permission slip you give yourself. It's the belief system that determines what actions feel possible. If you believe you're not a disciplined person, you won't even try to build discipline because you've already decided it's pointless. If you believe discipline is a skill that can be developed, you'll experiment. You'll stumble, you'll adjust, and eventually you'll become disciplined. This is why mindset is everything. It's not because positive thinking magically makes things happen. It's because your mindset determines your actions, and your actions determine your results. The mindset is the first domino. Everything else falls into place after that, or it doesn't, depending on what you believe about yourself and what's possible. The real power isn't in pretending. Everything is fine when it's not. It's in believing that where you are right now isn't where you have to stay. It's in understanding that every single limitation you feel is at least partly a story you're telling yourself. And stories can be rewritten. That's the shift. That's what changes everything. So here's where most people get stuck. They understand the idea intellectually. They nod along. They think, yeah, that makes sense. But then Monday morning comes, and they're back in the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same feelings. And they wonder why nothing changed. The reason is simple. Knowing something and believing something are completely different. Your mindset isn't just what you think about once. It's the automatic operating system running in the background of your life. It's the voice that speaks before you even realize you're thinking. That voice is so familiar, so constant that you stop noticing it was there. You think it's truth. You think it's reality, but it's not. It's just the default program that's been installed since you were young, from the people around you, from the messages you absorbed, from the experiences you interpreted in a certain way. And here's what's crucial. That program can be updated, but not through positive thinking alone, not through affirmations you don't actually believe, not through pretending everything is fine when it's not. The update happens through something much more powerful. It happens through evidence. It happens through experience. It happens when you do something small that contradicts the old story. Maybe the old story is that you're not good at public speaking. So you join a Toastmasters group. You give one speech. You survive. Nothing terrible happens. In fact, someone compliments you. That's not huge. But it's a crack in the old narrative. Your brain now has evidence that contradicts the old belief. Maybe the old story is that you can't stick to anything. So you commit to a 30-day challenge that's actually achievable. You show up every single day. You finish. Now you have proof, not hope. Proof. This is how real change happens. Not through willpower, not through motivation that fades, but through the slow accumulation of evidence that your old story isn't the complete truth. And the beautiful part is this: you don't need massive wins. You need consistent small ones. You don't need to transform your entire life in 90 days. You need to take one action that proves the old belief wrong, then another, then another. Each time you do something, despite the doubt, despite the fear, despite the voice telling you it won't work, you're reprogramming. You're building a new neural pathway. You're gathering evidence for a new story. That's why environment matters so much. That's why the people around you matter. That's why what you consume matters. Because you're constantly gathering evidence about who you are and what's possible. And your brain believes the evidence it sees most often. If you're surrounded by people who are growing, you have evidence that growth is possible. If you're reading about people who overcame obstacles, you have evidence that obstacles can be overcome. If you're taking small actions and seeing small results, you have evidence that you're capable. This is the real work of mindset. Not thinking positive thoughts into existence, but systematically, deliberately, consistently gathering evidence that contradicts your old limitations. And in doing that, you don't just change your mind, you change your life. The problem is most people gather evidence the wrong way. They wait for permission. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait until they feel ready, which means they never actually start. But readiness is a myth. You don't become ready by waiting. You become ready by doing the thing that scares you while you're still afraid. Think about someone you know who actually changed their life, not dramatically overnight. I mean, genuinely transformed who they are and what they're capable of. If you ask them when they felt ready, they'll tell you the truth. They weren't ready. They were terrified, but they did it anyway. That's the evidence that rewires your brain. Not the comfortable win, not the thing you were already good at. It's the attempt that feels impossible. It's the conversation you didn't think you could have. It's the project you didn't think you could complete. It's the person you didn't think you could become. And here's what changes everything. Every single time you do something hard while you're still afraid, your brain updates its model of who you are. It has to. The evidence is undeniable. You just did what you thought you couldn't do. Most people don't understand this, so they stay trapped in their old story. They tell themselves they're not creative, they're not disciplined, they're not brave, they're not capable of change. And then they go through life collecting evidence that supports that story, completely ignoring all the evidence that contradicts it. But once you understand how this works, you can flip it. You can start deliberately collecting evidence that you're capable of more, not through positive affirmations, not through wishful thinking, through actual behavior, through small, consistent actions that prove your old limitations were never real. This is why the size of the action doesn't matter as much as the consistency. You don't need to make a massive leap. You need to take one small step that contradicts your old story, then another, then another. Each one is a data point. Each one is evidence, and your brain is constantly updating based on the evidence you give it. The person who writes one page every day becomes a writer, not because they're talented, but because they have daily evidence that they write. The person who has one difficult conversation becomes someone who can have difficult conversations, not because they suddenly got braver, but because they proved to themselves it was possible. Your mindset isn't something you think your way into. It's something you build your way into. Brick by brick, action by action, evidence by evidence. And the beautiful part is this. Once you understand that your current limitations are just the result of the evidence you've been collecting, you realize you can change them anytime you want. You just have to start collecting different evidence. You just have to start doing things that contradict your old story. That's the real power of mindset. It's not magical thinking. It's not fake it till you make it. It's the systematic, deliberate gathering of evidence that you're more capable than you believed. And once that evidence accumulates, your mindset doesn't just shift. Your entire life shifts with it. So here's what happens next. You start noticing opportunities you never saw before. Not because they suddenly appeared. They were always there. But your mind was filtered to miss them. A fixed mindset is like wearing blinders. You see only what confirms your limitations. You see rejection as proof you don't belong. You see someone else's success as evidence of their natural talent, not their work. Your brain literally stops processing information that contradicts your story. But once your mindset begins to change, those filters drop. You walk into a room, and instead of thinking, I don't know anyone here, you think, who could I learn from today? You see a difficult project, and instead of, I'm not qualified for this, you think, what skills do I need to build? The exact same situation. Two completely different interpretations. And your interpretation determines your action. This is why mindset is everything. Because it's the invisible hand that guides every decision you make, every conversation you have, every risk you do or don't take. It's operating below conscious awareness most of the time. You don't wake up and think about your mindset. You just live from it. And that's exactly why it's so powerful and so dangerous if it's working against you. Here's the thing, though. Once you understand this, you can't unsee it. You start catching yourself in the act. You notice the moment you're about to dismiss an idea because you don't think you're creative enough. You feel the hesitation before you speak up in a meeting because you're worried you'll sound stupid. And in that moment of awareness, you have a choice. You can stay in the old story or you can gather new evidence. This is where most people get stuck, though. They understand intellectually that mindset matters. They read the books, they watch the videos, they nod along. But then they go back to their normal life and nothing changes. And they think mindset is bullshit. But it's not mindset that failed them. It's that understanding without action is just entertainment. Real mindset change requires you to do the thing you don't believe you can do. You have to fail at it. You have to feel uncomfortable. You have to look stupid sometimes. And you have to do it repeatedly until your brain has enough evidence to update story it's been telling about you. That's not easy. It's actually the hardest part. Because your old mindset will fight back. It will whisper that you're fooling yourself, that you're not that person, that you should stick to what you're good at. But here's what separates people who transform their lives from people who stay stuck. The ones who transform keep going anyway. They don't need to believe in themselves first. They just take the next small step. They gather one more piece of evidence, and then another. And slowly, almost without noticing, they become someone different. Not because they changed their thoughts, but because they changed their behavior and their thoughts followed. This is where most people get it wrong. They think the mindset shift comes first, then the action follows. But it's backwards. Your actions are what rewire your brain. Every time you do something difficult, every time you push through resistance, you're literally creating new neural pathways. You're building proof that you're capable, and your mind catches up to what your body already knows. Think about someone learning to swim. They don't stand on the edge of the pool, thinking positive thoughts until they magically believe they can swim. They get in the water. They flail around. They take on water. They keep going. And after 50 attempts, 100 attempts, their brain finally accepts the evidence. They can swim. The belief wasn't the starting point. The repeated action was. This is why environment matters so much. You can't think your way into a new identity if you're surrounded by the same triggers, the same people, the same routines that created the old one. Change your environment, and you change the friction. You make the new behavior easier and the old behavior harder. You remove the decision-making from the equation. If you want to be someone who reads, don't rely on willpower. Put a book on your pillow. Leave it on the kitchen table. Make reading the path of least resistance. If you want to be someone who exercises, join a gym near your house or your office. Pack your gym clothes the night before. Remove the friction between intention and action. Your mindset will follow. Not because you've convinced yourself through affirmations, but because you've given your brain undeniable evidence that this new identity is real. You've lived it. You've done it repeatedly. You've become it. The people who transform their lives aren't necessarily smarter or more talented than anyone else. They're just willing to be uncomfortable for longer. They understand that the discomfort is temporary. The identity that emerges from repeated action is permanent. They know that every small action is a vote for the person they're becoming, and they keep voting. So stop waiting for the belief to arrive first. Stop trying to think yourself into a new mindset. Start with the behavior. Start with the environment. Start with one small action that aligns with who you want to become. Do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, your mind will catch up. Your beliefs will shift. Your identity will transform. Not because you thought about it differently, but because you lived it differently. This is where most people get stuck. They understand the concept. They feel the motivation. But then life happens. A setback occurs. Someone criticizes them. The results don't come fast enough. And suddenly, that new identity feels like a lie they're telling themselves. Here's what separates people who actually change from people who just think about changing. They expect resistance. They plan for it. They don't treat obstacles as signs they're doing it wrong. They treat obstacles as part of the process. Your mind didn't form your current identity overnight. It formed through thousands of small experiences, conversations, and decisions stacked on top of each other. So, when you try to shift that identity, your brain pushes back. It's not broken. That resistance is normal. It's your nervous system trying to keep you safe in the familiar. The people who succeed understand this. They know that the discomfort of being someone new is temporary. The discomfort of staying the same is permanent. So they push through. Not with force, not, not with willpower alone, but with consistency is the actual superpower. Not motivation, not inspiration, consistency. Because consistency is what rewires your brain. It's what builds new neural pathways. It's what makes the new identity feel natural instead of forced. Think about a skill you've developed. Maybe you're a good driver, a decent cook, someone who can play an instrument. You weren't born knowing how to do these things. You practiced. You made mistakes. You felt awkward at first, but you kept going, and eventually, the skill became part of who you are. You don't think about it anymore. Your hands just know what to do. Identity works the same way. The difference is that most people treat identity as something fixed, something you're born with, something you discover. But that's backwards. Identity is something you build, one action at a time. And here's the part that changes everything. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in a week. You need to make one small choice today that's aligned with who you're becoming. Then make that same choice tomorrow. Then the day after that. That's the rhythm that works. Not intensity, rhythm. Not heroic effort, sustainable effort. The kind of effort you can actually maintain for months and years. Because real transformation takes time. Real identity shifts don't happen in 30 days. They happen in 3 months, 6 months, a year. But here's what's wild. If you're consistent for 3 months, you'll be unrecognizable in a year. Not because you forced yourself, but because you lived differently. You acted differently. You made different choices. And your mind followed. The person you become is not determined by what you think. It's determined by what you do. Repeatedly. Over time. With patience. With faith that the small actions are adding up even when you can't see it yet. That's the real power of mindset. Not positive thinking. Not visualization alone. But the commitment to show up as the person you want to become. Even when nobody's watching. Especially when nobody's watching. Because that's where character lives. That's where real change happens. In the moments between your private thoughts and your public face. In the decisions you make when the outcome doesn't matter to anyone but you. Think about the person you admire most. The one you'd point to and say, that's someone who has it figured out. They didn't get there by being perfect. They got there by being consistent. By choosing their mindset over and over again. Until it stopped being a choice and became who they actually are. Your mindset isn't something you fix once and then move on. It's something you return to every single day. When you wake up, you choose it. When you face rejection, you choose it. When you're tired and nobody would know if you cut corners, you choose it. That's the practice. That's the work that matters. And here's what most people miss. The transformation doesn't feel like transformation while it's happening. You won't wake up one day and suddenly feel completely different. Instead, you'll look back 6 months from now and realize you're not the same person anymore. The way you respond to problems will have shifted. Your tolerance for your own excuses will have changed. The things that used to derail you won't have the same power. That's not magic. That's just what happens when you stop negotiating with yourself about who you're going to be. So what do you do with this? Right now, today, what's the one area of your life where your mindset is holding you back? Not the area where you think you should improve, the one where you actually feel it, where you know you're capable of more, but something in your thinking is keeping you small. That's your starting point. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Today. Pick one situation coming up this week where you're going to show up differently, where you're going to choose a different mindset than you normally would. Don't make it complicated. Just notice the old pattern and choose something else instead. That single decision made once doesn't change anything. But that single decision made again and again and again, that's everything. That's how you become someone new. That's how you build a life that actually reflects what you're capable of. Your mindset isn't just about thinking better thoughts. It's about becoming a person who thinks better thoughts. It's about identity. It's about integrity. It's about the kind of human you're building yourself to be through the choices you make when nobody's keeping score but you. Start there. Start small. Start now. And then keep going. Because the person you're trying to become isn't waiting for you to be perfect first. They're waiting for you to show up. even imperfectly, even when you're scared, even when you don't feel like it yet. That's where your real power lives, in that commitment, in that choice, in that mindset.